The first thing I noticed was the sound, not the sight. A low, trembling cry, raw and desperate, echoed outside my door. At first I thought it was a dog, but when I opened the door, my entire body froze. There she was, a lynx, standing just a few steps away, her golden eyes locked onto mine. Her chest rose and fell quickly, and beside her, on the rough wooden boards of the porch, lay a tiny cub that barely moved. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Every instinct told me to close the door to protect myself. She was wild, powerful, and only a few feet away. My hands trembled on the doorknob. But then I looked again at her face. There was no aggression there. Her ears twitched nervously, her body tense. But her eyes, they weren't the eyes of a predator ready to strike. They were pleading. The cub gave a faint wheeze, its small body struggling with every breath. The mother shifted closer, lowering her head near the cub, as if to show me, as if to ask for something. My mind raced. How could a wild animal come here, to me, and not attack, but beg? I whispered softly, though I doubted she could understand. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." My voice shook, but I crouched slowly, keeping my hands where she could see them. Every move felt like walking on a thin rope above an endless drop. The lynx followed me with her eyes, every muscle in her body tight, but she didn't lunge. She waited. The cub's fur was damp with sweat, and weak shivers ran through its body. I wanted to reach out, but my fear held me back. I pictured claws flashing, teeth sinking into my arm. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. I hesitated so long that the cub let out another weak cry, and the sound cut me deeper than any claw could. I reached forward, slowly, with one hand. The lynx tensed, her ears pressed back for a second, but she didn't move. My fingers brushed the cub's side. It was burning hot, its tiny chest fluttering. I could feel how fragile it was. My throat tightened. This little creature was dying. Behind me, the house felt like safety. If I stepped back inside and shut the door, I could pretend this never happened. But as I knelt there, staring at the mother who hadn't left, who hadn't attacked, who had chosen to bring her cub here, something shifted in me. She trusted me in her own way. She had no other choice. And now I didn't either. I whispered again, this time more firmly. "All right, I'll help." The lynx blinked slowly, her eyes never leaving me. I slid my arms carefully under the cub's limp body. It was lighter than I expected, frighteningly so. As I lifted it, the mother stepped forward, and I froze. My breath caught in my throat. She stopped just a foot away, watching closely, her nose twitching. She gave a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl, not a threat, but something almost like approval. I rose carefully, holding the cub close to my chest. Its fur tickled my chin, its shallow breaths warming my skin. I backed toward the open door, never turning my back on the mother. She stayed on the porch, tense but unmoving, as if she knew this was the only way. Inside, the air felt heavier. I laid the cub gently on a blanket I pulled from the couch. My hands moved without thinking, checking its breathing, trying to find water, searching my memory for anything I'd learned about animals in trouble. Outside, through the window, I saw the mother still waiting, sitting low on her haunches, her eyes fixed on the door. I knew nothing about wild animal medicine, nothing about what could save this cub. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, but I hesitated. Who would believe me if I said a lynx brought me her dying cub? Would they think I was crazy? Would they send someone to take them both away? The thought made my stomach turn. The cub let out another faint cry, weaker than before. That sound decided everything for me. I couldn't stand by and watch it fade. I couldn't betray the trust that mother had placed in me. I pressed my palm gently on the cub's side, feeling the fragile heartbeat beneath its ribs. "You're going to fight, little one," I said, more to myself than to it. "And I'll fight with you." The fear that had nearly frozen me minutes before was still there, coiled in my chest. But now it was tangled with something else, determination. I didn't know how, I didn't know what it would take, but I had made my choice. Outside, the mother shifted her weight, her ears flicking toward the forest, then back to the door. She wasn't leaving. She wasn't giving up. And neither was I. That was the moment everything changed. I was no longer just a bystander. I had stepped into something far larger than myself. And there was no turning back. I placed the cub on the blanket and tried to remember anything useful from years of caring for my dog. Its breaths were shallow, its body hot, trembling under my hand. My chest tightened. I grabbed a bowl of water, dipped a clean cloth, and touched its lips gently, trying to moisten them. The cub barely responded. I felt powerless. I pulled out my phone and dialed Dr. Miller, the only veterinarian I knew personally. My hands shook so badly that I nearly dropped the phone. When he answered, I spoke in a rush, almost tripping over my own words. Paul, it's me. I know this sounds insane, but a lynx brought her cub to my porch. It's barely alive. I need help. There was silence on the line, then a disbelieving laugh. A lynx? Are you serious? I'm deadly serious, Paul. I don't have time to explain. Please. What do I do? He sighed. Then his tone shifted when he heard the panic in my voice. All right. Keep it warm. Make sure the airway is clear. Don't try to feed it. Just keep it stable. I'll try to drive over, but I'm out on a call. It'll take me at least 2 hours. 2 hours. I stared at the cub, its tiny chest fluttering weakly. I wasn't sure it had 2 hours. I'll do what I can, I said, and hung up. I grabbed a hot water bottle, wrapped it in a towel, and placed it beside the cub to keep its body temperature steady. Its ears flicked slightly, but otherwise it didn't move. I sat on the floor, my hand resting gently on its side, whispering words I didn't even realize I was saying. Stay with me. Just hold on. A shadow passed by the window. I turned and saw the mother. She was still there, pacing, her ears twitching with every sound, but she didn't leave. She sat down directly in front of the door, eyes fixed on me through the glass. Her presence was both terrifying and comforting. She trusted me enough to let me hold her cub, but the weight of that trust pressed down hard on my shoulders. Minutes crawled by like hours. The cub let out a faint whimper that barely reached my ears. I bent close, stroking its damp fur. You're not giving up, not now. I promise I'll get you help. I tried to remember the basics: airway, breathing, circulation. Its mouth opened slightly with each shallow breath, and panic surged through me. I tilted its head gently, hoping to ease its breathing. For a second, I thought it stopped moving, and my heart nearly burst. Then a faint twitch reassured me. Still alive. Barely. The thought of losing it right here, with its mother watching outside, made my throat close. If that happened, I would carry that image forever. I called Paul again, desperation spilling into my voice. It's getting worse. It's not going to last 2 hours. He hesitated, then said, If you can, bring it here. I'll call ahead to the clinic and make sure everything is ready. But listen carefully, it's risky. The mother might follow you. Be careful. I looked out the window again. The lynx sat completely still, her eyes locked on the house. Her stillness was heavier than her pacing. It was as if she was waiting for my decision. I swallowed hard. Taking the cub out there meant facing her again. Would she let me? Would she attack? My stomach churned. I found an old pet carrier in the garage, dusted it off quickly, and lined it with soft towels. My hands didn't stop shaking. I kept glancing toward the window. The lynx hadn't moved. When I returned to the cub, I lifted it gently, wrapping it in the blanket before lowering it into the carrier. Its breathing was faint but steady. I closed the latch softly, whispering, We're going to the doctor now. Just hang on. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. The mother was right there. She stood, muscles rippling under her spotted coat, her ears forward, her golden eyes locked onto me. The carrier in my hands felt heavier than stone. I froze. My voice cracked as I spoke. I'm taking your baby to get help. Please let me. She stepped forward, sniffing the air, and my knees nearly buckled. But she stopped inches away, lowered her head, and gave a low, guttural sound. Not anger. Something closer to approval. Then she backed up slowly, sitting again at the edge of the porch. I didn't wait for her to change her mind. Heart pounding, I carried the cub down the steps, each footstep heavier than the last. I could feel her eyes burning into my back, but she didn't move. She was letting me go. At the car, I set the carrier gently on the passenger seat and started the engine. My hands gripped the wheel so hard they ached. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her figure at the edge of the trees, watching as I pulled away. She didn't chase. She just stood there, silent, trusting me to return what I had taken. For the first time since this began, I felt the weight of her trust not as a burden, but as a command. I had no choice now. I had to save her cub. The drive to the clinic felt endless, though it was barely 20 minutes. Every red light felt like a death sentence. I kept glancing at the carrier beside me, praying to hear a breath, a movement, any sign of life. The cub barely stirred. When I finally pulled into the parking lot, I grabbed the carrier and rushed inside. The receptionist looked up, startled. What is that? It's a lynx cub, I said breathlessly. It's dying. I need a doctor right now. Her eyes widened, and she stammered. We don't handle wild animals. You need to call animal control. There's no time for that. I snapped. Please, just get someone. The noise must have carried, because Dr. Miller appeared from the back, still in his scrubs. His face tightened when he saw the carrier. You really weren't kidding. No, I wasn't. It's barely breathing. Please, Paul. He motioned me toward an exam room. Bring it in, quick. I set the carrier on the table and opened it. The cub lay limp, its chest rising shallowly. Dr. Miller's eyes softened, but he didn't move right away. He looked at me instead. You understand what this means? Treating a wild animal isn't just risky, it's against protocol. The state requires permits. If anyone finds out, I don't care. I cut him off. If paperwork matters more than its life, then I'll take the blame. Just save it. For a moment he studied me, then gave a sharp nod. All right, but this stays between us. He and a vet tech moved quickly. They checked the cub's airway, inserted in 4-line, administered fluids. Oxygen hissed softly as they placed a mask near its muzzle. I stood pressed against the wall, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles turned white. The cub didn't fight, didn't even twitch. That scared me more than anything. The tech glanced at Paul nervously. It's very weak. Heart rate's dropping. Paul muttered under his breath, then looked up at me. It's dehydrated, malnourished, possibly infection. We'll need antibiotics, fluids, constant monitoring. But listen, his eyes met mine. There's no guarantee. It may not make it through the night. My throat closed. Do everything you can. Please. He nodded and gave instructions to the tech. I hovered uselessly, feeling more like a criminal than a savior. Every time the monitors beeped, I flinched. I thought of the mother, still waiting at the edge of the forest. What would I tell her if her cub never came back? After what felt like hours, Paul stepped back, pulling off his gloves. We've stabilized it for now. Fluids are running. Antibiotics are in. But this is critical. It's touch and go. Can I stay? I asked. He sighed. You shouldn't, but I know you will. Just don't interfere. I pulled a chair close to the table, resting my hand near the cub. Its fur was still hot under my palm, but its breaths were slightly deeper. I leaned in, whispering, You're not alone. Fight. Your mom is waiting. Paul left me for a while, coming back every few minutes to check vitals. Each time, he repeated the same grim warning. No promises. The next few hours will decide everything. The weight of those words sank into me. Hours. That was all we had. I pressed my hand more firmly on the blanket, as if my presence alone could anchor the cub to life. The clinic around me blurred. The only thing that existed was the fragile rhythm of its breathing and the memory of golden eyes watching from the forest, trusting me to do the impossible. The hours stretched into days, each one blending into the next. I hardly left the clinic, barely eating, sleeping only in short, restless bursts in the chair beside the small cage where the cub lay. Every beep of the monitor, every shallow rise of its chest, kept me on edge. Paul and the staff did everything they could, fluids, antibiotics, injections, but so much of the care came down to the smallest, constant things. Wiping its muzzle, keeping it warm, coaxing it to swallow a few drops of milk with a syringe. At night, when the clinic closed, Paul trusted me enough to take the cub home for closer observation. He knew I wouldn't leave its side. The drive back was silent except for its faint breaths. When I carried it inside, I laid it in a box lined with blankets beside my bed. I stayed up through the night, checking its breathing, adjusting the hot water bottle, whispering to it in the dark. Every few minutes I would jerk awake, terrified that its tiny chest had gone still. But each time, it was still there, still fighting. On the second night, I heard something outside. A low sound, almost a growl but not quite. I pulled back the curtain, and there she was, the mother, sitting at the edge of the yard, her eyes glowing faintly in the porch light. She didn't move closer, didn't threaten. She just stayed there, watching the house. I knew she hadn't given up. She was waiting, guarding, trusting me to finish what she had started. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. Neighbors noticed the lynx near my property, and panic rippled through them. One evening, as I stepped outside to bring in firewood, a man from down the road called out, "You need to call animal control. That thing's dangerous. It's been hanging around your yard for days." I tightened my grip on the wood. She's not here to hurt anyone. She's just waiting for her cub. He shook his head angrily. You're putting everyone at risk. Kids walk down this road. If that animal snaps. She won't, I said firmly, though inside I wasn't completely sure. But I couldn't betray her. Not after everything. At night, I sat on the porch, the cub sleeping inside, and I could feel her presence in the darkness. Sometimes she would let out a soft cry, not aggressive, but aching with patience and worry. I answered her quietly, even though I knew she didn't understand. I'm doing my best. Just hold on. The cub's condition wavered. Some mornings I thought I was losing it, its breath shallow, its body limp. Other times, a flicker of strength appeared. On the fourth day, it lifted its head for the first time and gave a weak, raspy sound. I nearly burst into tears. I called Paul immediately. That's good, he said when he arrived to check. It's responding. Keep feeding it small amounts. Keep it warm. This doesn't mean it's safe yet, but it's progress. Progress. The word filled me with a hope I hadn't allowed myself to feel. That night, as I tried to coax the cub to lap at a shallow dish, its tongue flicked weakly at the milk. Just a few drops, but enough to make my heart race. That's it, I whispered. You can do this. One more. Slowly, carefully, it drank a little more. Its ears twitched, its body trembling, but it was fighting. I sat back, exhausted, and finally allowed myself a deep breath. For the first time since this began, I believed it might survive. I went to the window and saw the mother again, crouched low under the trees. I whispered through the glass, "Your baby's fighting. We're getting there." For a long time, I stood there in the quiet, the cub sleeping soundly behind me, the lynx watching from the darkness. It felt like we were bound together by something invisible, fear, desperation, and now, finally, a flicker of hope. The days that followed were like watching a miracle in slow motion. Each morning, the cub showed a little more strength. Eyes opening wider, paws twitching as if testing their strength, a faint but real spark returning to its tiny body. The exhaustion I had carried for days was replaced by cautious joy. Every step forward felt like borrowed time being given back. Dr. Miller visited often, checking vitals, adjusting medications, and reminding me to be patient. On the 7th morning, he smiled for the first time since this began. "It's strong enough now," he said, gently examining the cub. "It's eating, moving. We've done what we can. It doesn't belong here. It needs to return to the wild." My chest tightened at his words. I knew he was right. The cub was no pet. It wasn't mine to keep. Still, the thought of letting go pierced me deeper than I expected. I had spent every waking moment beside it, fighting with it, whispering encouragement through the nights. Letting it go felt like tearing away a piece of myself. That evening, I carried the cub outside for the first time since that night on the porch. Its body was steadier now, its eyes bright, its head lifting with curiosity as the wind brushed its fur. I set it gently on the grass. It wobbled but stayed upright, sniffing at the air. My heart raced at the sight. At the edge of the trees, a shape stirred. The mother emerged, silent and graceful, her golden eyes glowing in the twilight. She stepped forward slowly, her ears forward, her body tense with recognition and doubt. I held my breath. Would she accept her cub after days apart, after the strange smells of humans and medicine? The cub squeaked weakly, tottering toward her on unsteady legs. The mother froze, her muscles rigid, then lowered her head cautiously. I whispered to myself, "Please, don't turn away." The cub pressed against her paw and looked up at her. For a moment that stretched forever, the lynx did nothing. Then she lowered her nose and touched the cub gently, inhaling deeply. A low, soft sound rumbled from her chest. Not the sharp call of a hunter, but something closer to relief. The cub leaned into her, trembling but alive. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed my hand to my mouth, watching as the two of them reconnected in a way I could never fully understand. The mother nudged her cub closer to her chest, licking its head, cleaning away the traces of sickness and human hands. She accepted it. She had her baby back. I stayed still, afraid even to breathe. I didn't want to break the fragile thread of trust that had carried us this far. After a few minutes, she turned her gaze toward me. Our eyes met. There was no fear, no aggression, just a deep, silent acknowledgement. She blinked slowly, then turned back to her cub. With one last glance, she nudged the cub forward, and together they slipped back into the shadows of the trees. The forest swallowed them quietly, leaving only the rustle of leaves behind. I sank onto the porch steps, my body trembling with exhaustion and release. The house behind me was silent. The yard felt emptier than ever. But inside me, there was something fierce and unshakable. I had witnessed something few people ever would, a wild creature's trust, a bond between two worlds that usually stayed apart. The ache of letting go cut deep, but it was mixed with pride, with purpose. I knew I would never see them again. And yet, every time I looked at the edge of the woods, I would remember that moment. The golden eyes in the twilight, the cub pressing against its mother, and the feeling that for once, for a brief, fragile time, I had been part of something far greater than myself.